Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou. Welcome to the Strategy and Recovery Committee meeting, the 2nd of May 2024. Welcome to those who are tuning in via our live streaming and also our community here in the gallery. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin proceedings, I'd like to pass over to Ngaio to open us with an opening karakia. If you could turn on your microphone too, thank you.
Hapai tia te Māori, hapai tia te Māori o ngā tipuna, te Māori aio, te Māori ānuki, te Māori ārangi, te Māori aroha, hapai tia te Māori o ngā tipuna, uhi wero, uhi taia, nau mai te Māori, haumie huie, tai hie, kia ora.
Kia ora. For the benefit of those who are tuning in and those who are in the gallery, you will see devices in front of our councillors. They use their iPads for access to papers for the meeting, so that's why they've got them in front of them. And just a reminder to members of the committee to please move your devices to the side when using your microphone so that the community can hear you. I'd also like to remind everyone that we are currently live streaming today's meeting, so we are, if you look around the room, you will see the cameras and we are being broadcasted out to the community. Before we move on to anything else, I'd like to go on to item 1, which is apologies. I have received apologies from Izzy Crawshaw from the Rural Community Board, and a leave of absence has previously been granted to Councillor Fowler. I've also received an apology for lateness from Councillor Nixon. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Leave of absence requests? No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kerr, for moving. Thank you, Councillor Buddo, for seconding. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. We'll now move on to item 2, which is a reminder around conflicts of interest. As we come to items, if there are any conflicts, if the relevant committee members can please declare them at the time, we will note those. Moving on to item 3, confirmation of minutes. Minutes of the previous Strategy and Policy Committee have been circulated, and I'm looking for a mover and a seconder on those. Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Thank you, Councillor Lawson. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Welcome, Councillor Nixon. Right, our next item is item 4, which is the petition to remove fluoride from the Hastings drinking water. I would like to, before we welcome up our 2 speakers, Angela and Lizzie, and thank you for being here, I'd first like to go over to Craig Cameron for a bit of an update around this and the process.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through you, also Madam Chair. This agenda item is to receive a petition. As you've just said, the petition relates to the petitioners seeking or wishing to express their view about the removal of fluoride from Hastings drinking water. So the item is about the receipt of the petition. It's not, and that's reflected in your recommendations for consideration. It's not a matter to actually debate the issue of fluoridation in the water.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. All right, I'd now like to welcome Angela here and Lizzie Freeman, who are going to come up and present on behalf of the petitioners for 10 minutes. I have reminded them that I will give them a little nod when 2 minutes to go, and at 10 minutes we will ask them to conclude. Just a reminder to turn on the little button next to you so that you can be heard. And otherwise, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of Fluoride-Free Hastings. My name is Angela Hare, and I have been pushing back on the disposal of the highly corrosive and toxic HFSA chemical through the urban water supply for over 15 years. Studies on fluoride in the past have been done on sodium fluoride, not the highly corrosive SH poison that you, the council, are adding to the people of Hastings and Havelock North, water supplies. You haven't seen me in council for 10 years because I've been struggling through a health crisis probably caused by fluorine tablets given to me as a 5-month-old baby in the 1960s. The blood-brain barrier does not close until an infant is 6 months old. Those fluorine ions flooded into my brain and attached to my calcium-rich pineal gland, showing up as a tumour 5 decades later. Exposure to fluoride in Wellington's drinking water, fluoridated toothpaste, and drinking tea increased my exposure until the tumour got big enough to block my brain plumbing, resulting in hydrocephalus. 3 brain operations, 6 weeks of life-threatening radiation to the centre of my brain, and 2 years of fighting a hospital superbug cost me, my family, my community, and the country thousands of dollars in surgeries, radiation, and loss of productive working time. As an allied health worker, I'm a homeopath. This is documented in my book, Key Flowers, A Homeopathic Transformation, which I've given to Mayor Hazelhurst, and I have for sale here today or on from my website. We've come to Council today to present our citizens' petition that has been signed by over 600 Hastings and Havelock people who do not want this toxic chemical in their water supply. They do not want to bathe in it, cook with it, or drink this industrial waste from the fertiliser industry. They cannot avoid it, even with a library fountain that is fluoride and chlorine free. How does an 80-year-old lug a large container of drinking water to their car? On Friday, the 5th of April, we asked Mayor Hazelhurst to apply to the Ministry of Health to delay fluoridation of the Hastings water supply. Nelson City Council has had an extension until the 31st of December 2024. This extension will give Nelson City Council time for clarification of the implications of the new Health versus Ministry of Health ruling in relation to the error of law by the Director General of Health. He did not consider the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, which is from 1990, in making the directive, the fluoridation directive to councils. The Bill of Rights Act gives people the right to refuse medical treatment. Fluoridation is a medical treatment. An injunction against the Hastings City Council will be held in Wellington High Court on the 16th of May, that's next week, to stop your fluoridation. I will be there along with Lizzie and Kevin Tinker and other Hastings supporters. Fluoridation is unethical and unlawful. It does harm to all that ingest it. It's cumulative in the body over a lifetime and may eventually lead to thyroid dysfunction, arthritic pain, Alzheimer's, dementia, tooth and bone fluorosis, and tumours. Please don't put this toxic chemical into our water supply. The next generation of fluoride protesters is here, Lizzie, and the generation will come after Lizzie, and the generation will come after that generation, until finally fluoride is not in our water anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, and to all the Council for giving us time to speak today. My name is Lizzie Freeman. You may be wondering why I am standing beside Angela, who has been pushing back for so many years on the urban disposal of hydrofluoric acid. You may have seen me or met me over the last few weeks in my yellow fluoride t-shirt, coming in and out of the council asking those difficult questions. Well, I'm a mother of 3 school-aged children who a few months ago, like the majority of Hawke's Bay residents, believed that fluoride in our drinking water was a natural product. What a shock it was to me to learn that this is far from the truth, and the fluoride in our water is not the medical-grade fluoride you have at the dentist, but is a toxic acid, the waste product from the fertilizer industry. It is so toxic, the companies that make it are prohibited to let it out into the air, the river, the sea. It is non-biodegradable and is a known neurotoxin. With this new knowledge, I felt compelled to do something, as so many are unaware of the fluoride harms and the truth, which is hidden behind old research and dogma. In my research, I only had to scratch the surface, and entirely up-to-date scientific research shows that this matter must be taken extremely seriously. For example, fluoride is proven to lower children's IQ. In May 2023, the US government's National Toxicology Program released a 6-year review of all the human fluoride IQ studies in a form of a monograph and a meta-analysis. The meta-analysis reported that 52 of 55 human IQ studies found an average reduction of 7 IQ points. These studies included the Bakash 2018, Green 2019, Till 2020, and Farmers 2021, very up-to-date research. Not only did the meta-analysis prove that fluoride lowers children's IQ, it proved it could not detect a safe level of exposure to fluoride. Fluoridation is such a non-holistic view of human well-being and health. Do you know that the claimed benefits from drinking fluoridated water is from topical contact only? Dr. Robin Wayman from Health NZ explains that when you swallow fluoride, it goes into your bloodstream and around 50% of it is then stored in your bones and soft tissue. Then some fluoride is eventually secreted through the salivary glands to supposedly benefit the tooth surface. The amount of fluoride secreted in the saliva is 0.016 per million parts per million, which is 62,000 times less fluoride than the normal adult's toothpaste. Drinking fluoride water makes no sense at all. Just use fluoridated toothpaste if that's your choice. Considering the New Zealand Supreme Court ruled in 2018 that fluoridation is compulsory medical treatment that violated Section 11 of our Bill of Rights, I was not surprised that the directive to mandate the 14 councils by Ashley Bloomfield was deemed unlawful by the High Court last November. However, what did surprise me was that the 14 councils were still expected to comply with this unlawful directive. In response to this continued mandate, Angela and I met with Catherine Wedd, MP, to educate and question her on our new government's policy on fluoridation. We wanted to let Catherine know how Hastings Council felt their hands were tied. How could a new government continue with such an unlawful directive? Catherine, as a new MP, was happy to listen to our concerns and was not aware of the fines imposed to Council at this stage. Nelson Council had already been granted an extension to the directive. Hastings Council, before Angela and I met Catherine Wedd, you had been requested by the people of Hastings and Fluoride Free New Zealand to ask for an extension to the directive, just like Nelson Council. It was then devastating to receive a text message from your water management team on the day I met Catherine Wedd that you were to start fluoridation on the 8th of April. I could not comprehend your decision. I was extremely distressed knowing that young breastfeeding mums and those who bottle feed their babies were not aware of the fluoridation harms. Today, as I speak, they are drinking water with no warning. It was disturbing that you, the Hastings Council, had a window of opportunity to step back and request an extension, and you choose not to, and simply sent the people with the concerns the same generic message. This is not up for discussion. Well, I am standing here today as I believe, and its harms have to be up for discussion. Not only do we, the people, require the right to discuss this matter, we have the right to refuse a medical treatment. Can I keep going? medical treatments should have a medical insert to the medication they are prescribing. As we are now being mass medicated, I have asked your counsel for the medical insert so that I can be properly informed on the medication I now have to drink. But all you could give me was the safety data sheet to the hydrofolicic acid product that you have started adding to our drinking water. The 11 pages of the safety data are shocking in its own right. I do not understand that the safety data sheet from ICSIM is for the handling and transporting of the extremely toxic waste. For example, it states things such as may be corrosive to metals, conditions to avoid, contact with foodstuffs, corrosive effects, symptoms of fluorosis may include weight loss, brittle bones, anemia, weakness and stiffness of joints. But best of all, it states, keep out of waterways, avoid contaminating waterways. My concerns continue. I have contacted ICSIM personally and they were surprised that I asked for a medical insert and any long-term human studies for the medication that the company is now providing. They could not provide me with the information, only information from the Ministry Health guidelines. What worries me is ICSIM's disclaimer states, since ICSIM Operations Limited cannot anticipate or control the conditions under which the product may be used, each user, the Hastings Council, must, prior to the uses, assess and control the risks from the use of the material. I said to James Wan at ICSIM, I have read your disclaimer on the safety data sheet. I understand it is then the Hastings District Council's responsibility to assess the long-term health effects. But I ask you, has this ever been done? Fluoride-free Hawke's Bay believe it should not be the Hastings District Council responsibility to put a waste product into our drinking water. We are advocating for you. So why the rush to fluoridate? Many of the 14 councils who have been mandated, like you, asked for an extension to fluoridation while awaiting the new Health Director General's versus the court case. Other councils are listening to their people. Hastings Council, by starting fluoridation on the 8th of April without proper warning, discussion or consideration to the people who voted you in, is irresponsible, unethical and unlawful. In the last couple of weeks, our petition asking you to stop fluoridation has received 624 signatures. On behalf of the people of Hastings, I would like to present this petition. Please listen to our concerns, stop the fluoridation taps, write to the Ministry of Health and ask for an extension to the directive.
Thank you, Angela and Lizzie. And I know that you were nervous about going overtime, but you were only a little bit. Well done. Also, just for information of councillors, the petition is currently sitting on the table in the middle, and you have updated us aptly on the number of signatures. Thank you. Right, so we have recommendations on page 10, which is the receiving of the petition. Can I please have a mover to the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Apatu. I will put those recommendations. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much to our community for coming in today to speak to us. You're very welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. However, if you prefer not to, you're also very welcome to leave at any time. Thank you. Right, so we'll now move on to item 5, which is the Cyclone Gabrielle Recovery Report, quarter 3. And I would like to invite Gus to come and present. Welcome, Gus. All right, Gus, if you can take us through.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. So we thought we'd give you a quick PowerPoint which summarises the cyclone recovery update for the period February to April. We thought we'd do it a bit differently today. We're iterating as we go, so instead of me summarising all of the enormous breadth of work taking place across council, we thought we'd get each of the PO leads to talk specifically about each of their areas. So I'll kick off with just a bit of an update on the voluntary buyout, because there's been quite a bit that's happened since the numbers that you have seen in the cyclone recovery update, and then we'll pass on to the onto the PO leads. So we're making really good progress with the voluntary buyout. So as of yesterday, 57% of eligible property owners have received an offer, or have accepted that offer, or have settled. So by next Tuesday, that will be just over 60%. We're on track to have most of the offers in front of owners by mid-September. There may be a very small number of complex cases that we're still dealing with at that point, but we're making good progress. Valuations have, as you know, we have a certain number of valuers in the district, and we had been worried about that becoming a major bottleneck. We worked through that by bringing on more valuers to valuation panel. That has worked really well. We're now beyond that bottleneck, and most of those, or 62% of the valuations, have been completed. So basically, really good progress. We had initially, I'll just bring up the right slide. We had initially assumed in the initial assumptions that around 10% of property owners would not want to engage. We're about right with those numbers. There are a small number of property owners who have chosen not to take up the opportunity for a meeting with the voluntary buyout office at this particular point. There is a smaller number of owners who have had that initial meeting with the voluntary buyout office and then have chosen not to go through to the valuation stage. Essentially, the main reasons for that is that they don't believe in the land categorisation process, and so they've chosen the option. Will be choosing the option of staying. So that's their decision to make. It's a voluntary process. Yeah, so that's enough. I don't know. Would you like to take questions as we go through at the end, Chair?
Do we have any questions at this stage? It's a very comprehensive report that you've pulled together in terms of an update. I really valued reading it, so thank you. Are there any questions on that document before Gus carries on? Councillor Kerr?
Gus, you mentioned about owners that are not engaging. Are we to have a conversation around an end point?
Through you, Chair, and before Gus here. Not right now, but it's coming shortly. I think, as the report outlined, at this stage, 91% of the Category 3 property owners have chosen to engage in the process, and we are forecasting that we will be largely, substantially finished the voluntary buyout program towards the end of the calendar year. So what we will need to talk with Council about in the next couple of months is it is a voluntary process, but obviously it's also quite a expensive undertaking to maintain a voluntary buyout office across all of the property group and staff. So I think in the next couple of months we'll need to have a conversation that says at what point do we say to people that have chosen to this point not to engage in the process that there is a cut-off point in which to choose to engage.
Yeah.
May I just follow up on that? My thinking would be if we can do that sooner rather than later, because then we're making a decision simply around dates and times, and it will not be as focused as it's only this handful of families are not engaging, or this part of the community, or the sector. So the sooner we can have those conversations, the less personal it potentially becomes for those that are still struggling to engage with us for whatever reason.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
And through you, Chair, I'm remiss. I should have said the recovery report itself, we've flagged a number of times that it was an iteration. We started off with something that was quite simple and plain, And Annette and Joe have done a wonderful job of just iterating and making it a more sophisticated document over time. So that is what you see in front of you, and we'll continue to do that. So I just want to pass on my considerable thanks to Annette and Joe for the work that they've put into it. Thanks, team.
Fabulous. Are there any questions at this point? No? Okay. Good. Great. Chris. Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I have the privilege of giving you a wee bit of an update on the community and whānau wellbeing po. Our team's been really busy in this last quarter, actively re-engaging back out in our communities. You can see there's 34 urban and rural engagements, predominantly in our rural affected communities. We've been working really closely with Craig's team in the roading and infrastructure, as much as Regan Smith's team with the risk and resilience. Wherever the need is, we're out there, we're boots on the ground, reconnecting with our communities. There's been lots of celebrations, as well as lots of how are you? Where are you feeling now? What does it feel like? How do we support you? How do we walk alongside you and take those next steps forward? Some of the more impacted communities we have started to re-engage with, and they are very receptive to the team sitting alongside them, which is a really positive thing. I see Jonathan sitting over there. What we've also started doing is walking alongside some of our communities that haven't yet done a lot in that resilience space, and we've asked those that are further down the track and if they would host us. So we have, and we did a really successful one for the Pōketapu Greater Community out to Marae Kākoho to show what they were doing, and then up to Te Puhui to share what they were doing. So that has been really beneficial too, to show our communities what they could do, what they could learn from other areas. So that's been a success.
Any questions around that part of the update? Councillor Kerr.
I'm just going to stand to speak to this. From our communities, plural, across the rural sector, thank you. And this is a thank you personally and to your team. And anyone and everyone that appears to have engaged with the variety of rural communities has been nothing but impressed with the love and the care that comes. I appreciate we also come with money, as we can see there, but more than anything, it's for that community to have a go-to person or people. So I'm not sure if Jonathan wants to speak after me. The work in the rural sector has been nothing short of phenomenal. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Hazelhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I totally support Councillor Kerr's and how the amazing job you and your connected team are doing, Kirsten. My question is around the 20 people that haven't engaged with the buyout process, and I'm interested to understand if our connectors have been working with them directly.
For most of those 20 people, they've given us an absolutely firm no that they do not want to hear from us again. And so we have engaged with them through the community, through the Cat3 connectors a number of times, until the point at which they've said, actually, sorry, we don't want to hear from you again. There are a couple that are still dealing with some complex insurance issues, and so we touch base with them regularly just to see where they're at. But for the most part, they've said, don't ring us.
I'd now like to come to our Chair of our Rural Community Board, Jonathan Stockley.
Thank you, Chair, and I would just like to support the comments made by Councillor Kerr a moment ago. The work that Kirsten, the whole team of connectors and the whole team that backs all those people up have done just a most outstanding job with many of our rural communities. And just as Kirsten described, it's the love, the support that goes alongside the very practical things that are being done to help everybody, encourage everybody, enthuse everybody into this new world that we're now having to accept and live in, and the preparedness that all our rural communities have got to develop for ourselves, really, but with the support of council and all the council officers. So very much a huge thank you from the Rural Community Board.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there any more to your particular PO update? All right.
No,
Go back to
I
Gus.
think that's good. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. We don't have a Po Ahurea rep here today, but just to mention that they have been doing some fantastic work, particularly with Kirsten's team and Craig's team, engaging with infrastructure contractors and engaging with Marae on resilience issues in a similar way that we've engaging with communities who can learn from other communities who have done some neat stuff. So they've got some really rich material in the update, and I'm sure they would be happy to answer any questions if you have any questions on their work.
Any questions at this point? I realise that we don't necessarily have our representative here, but we could record them. No? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next PO update. Mr. Thu.
Kia ora all. Obviously, we've just recently put out a draft LTP, so I guess the scale of work in the transport space in particular is quite apparent to you all. It is a long-term journey. You're all aware of many of those stats, with 18 bridges and large culverts completely destroyed, 161 bridges damaged, of that 81 requiring major repairs. 212 major slips that still require repairing and fixing. In all, without doing cost escalation, we're looking at $800 million worth of work over the next 7 to 10 years, subject to obviously the LTP, funding streams, NZTA, recovery, emergency funding, and the Crown funding that we do have, and we will continue working with RRA in terms of trying to achieve further funding to help support this. The work in terms of investment has been programmed out over 7 years, working on that funding assumption at the moment. And the little chart at the bottom, just you won't be able to pick out the colours, just goes to the level of investment in different type of work, where we've got bridges and culverts in the dark blue. There's work around slips, there's work around road rehabs, work around design. The little green boxes is us getting as much design in the draw early as possible, which will give us ultimate flexibility if funding streams come up, and also enables us to help manage potential consenting risks. Unfortunately, we haven't been given the same powers that KiwiRail and NZTA got in terms of being able to get on with some work on the road or beside the road. And so that's a discussion we're having with RRA and with CIP and CRU, just around what we may be able to do to reduce some of the consenting burden, particularly when we're replacing things in the same location. Bridges and culverts, that there is the almost completed Crystal Twin, which we took the community up to as part of the Te Pahui Tutera community, the Tutera Pororino community last week, along with TREC representatives. That will be another week or two, and we'll be looking to open that fully. It's fully trafficable across the top, Your Worship. I think you went for a drive with the Deputy Mayor and you called it your Crumpy experience. You're now going across the road. So that project's gone very well. Probably other key ones that you're aware of, you signed off a procurement approach for Puketapu Bridge for an ECI approach. We are now the design is largely complete. I've been working through, now we're in negotiation to see if we can get to a landing on a suitable price with that ECI contractor, which was Fulton's. As a reminder, if we can't get to a price that we think is fair and reasonable, then we'd come back to you with the option of potentially taking that to wider market. However, that is going positively. There is an opportunity that the team are discussing, which I'll pick up with them later today, is one of the timeframes of that project is what the big bridge, the casings that go into the ground. There are 3 providers, 2 are cheaper than one. We are looking at potentially making an early call on materials, because there's some materials that's become available with the government putting on hold some of the Picton ferry terminal works. There is some material that if we put an order in the next day or two for ordering these casings, which are worth somewhere in the range, sub 1 million, but still very big numbers, lots of zeros, we could actually have them available within weeks, not months, which would really be useful in terms of protecting a critical path on that project, which will keep that bridge renewal project on focus. The other one that you letter 10 that you have worked through, we're on to design build. The team are close to finalising the evaluation to select the top 3 who will then work out designs to come back to us with a confirmed price for Matapero Culvert. And the groundworks is progressing up at Kiruru Gorge, and we're just working through the procurement approach to complete the rest of the work, which is actually building the massive plate culvert. Massive amount of attention on keeping to schedule on that. The commitment we are having is to still working to having it open to traffic before Christmas. We're doing a lot, it's costing us a lot of money, and doing a lot to try and keep Salisbury Road, which is the only other access for that community, open over winter. So it will be a dreary time for that community up there until we can get Kiruru Gorge open. So a lot of tension, but a lot of effort going in to try and do the best with that. And we are working through the demolition at the moment of a number of the bridges that were still lying in the Awa within the rivers. So that's down here on the plains, that's removing the broken sections of Brookfield Bridge from the waterway. The call at the moment is to leave the existing structure that still stands of Brookfields, just while future planning and thinking goes ahead with that. And you will be aware, or hopefully you would have seen a notice, that Redcliffe Bridge will close for the day during daylight hours this weekend on the 5th. And that's to do some maintenance work on the bridge decks, where 6 of the 42 decks just are getting spalling, which is where the 2 concrete decks are smacking up against. So they'll just do some repairs to that to reduce the amount of that, and install treatment to mitigate the effect. That's partly due to vehicles not doing the 30k an hour and breaking it, which makes those decks, given it's a temporary structure. So that work will happen this weekend, subject to fine. If it's wet, we'll have to reschedule. Next slide. As I've talked through, we had... No, it's fine. Slips, a significant amount of work on dropouts, so slips, underslips and overslips. Big one that's working at the moment is the big one on Dartmoor Road. The first key task for that is the team had to build a massive windrow to move the river away from the toe of that slip. But there are lots of them, and slips are going to take us 7 years to fix. That's a long program. And the panel contract that's out to the market at the moment, so we were looking to 3 to 4 major contractors, they will be working on a large number of these slips as well as road rehabs, and a lot of the road rehabs are further into the program where we've scheduled it. As an example, the piece that's in that panel contract, Taihape Road is the first tranche of that, and that would be a package of work to do all of the dropouts and overslips along Taihape Road. But there are packages for Glengarry, for Puketitiri, right across the district that are currently scheduled. Next slide. So not only did, and we've talked about this before, but it's just important that to reiterate, because it's an ongoing conversation that we're also having with our co-funders at NZTA, Waka Kotahi, is, so not only did the cyclone damage our road, the pavements and the seals from the water and the debris that went over, What we're also getting and have and will continue to have more of is ongoing damage just by the mere fact of responding to the event. So that's Matapiro Road. So there is a quarry up Matapiro Road, and so that road had some struggles before because of that quarry. But because we're hauling so much material out of this quarry and many others, because we're moving so much silt around the network, we are stressing local roads that weren't designed to take the amount of traffic they are. So we are having further effects. And similarly, as I mentioned before, Salisbury Road, because all the cars are going down that gravel road, that's getting a lot more damage and it's costing us a lot more to maintain. So the transport team are having active and continued conversations with NZTA around funding, additional funding where we can at their initial 93% response rate, which will run out at the end of June. But just also around the bills will keep coming, and it's just going to be something we have to continue to manage and maintain. Probably just in terms of key risks, as I mentioned before, we are working through is just around that consenting pathway, but also there's some really good conversations underway and with discussions through with our PSGs around how do we effectively do all that engagement around cultural impacts and sites, because there are so many sites. No one has capacity. We don't have capacity. Our Mana Whenua partners don't have capacity to talk about every single job. So it's how do we consolidate that up? And so there are set sessions to work through how to eat that in an appropriate fashion. Ongoing internal resourcing remains a challenge. I won't shy away from that, both in terms of staff lost to the contracting market who have got really busy, but also just generally. So I'm working with Bruce Nigel, Chief Executive, and HR around what every metric and everything we can do to maintain the resources we've got. And we're hunting really hard out in the market. It was really unfortunate. I think last time, Mayor Hazelhurst, you asked me a question in the council meeting, as we'd just managed to pick up an employee who'd come off that Picton project. We got a call from him on the Friday before he started on Monday that had taken a job working further up the coast. So that's just the nature of the market that we're working in. So we're doing everything we can to try and make sure we can actually resource. At the moment, we're relying on a lot of secondments, which helps get the work done, but it's not necessarily the most efficient way for us to work. Yeah, so in terms of, so you're aware Marius decided to look for other things to do as an asset manager. We're out to market for that. Just last week, we lost a project manager who's been working on our transport BAU work, so Tim Dredden. He is leaving and going to Topori, the old Russell Roads. The week before, Alf has left to join NZTA to deal with their traffic management. So it's a real tension at the moment, and will remain so, but I'll keep you updated. And just obviously funding, which we'll keep you abreast of.
Right, well, that was a huge update. Do we have questions for Mr. Thu? Yeah, Hazelhurst.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for that update, Craig. I've got a number of questions, but just to pick up on your point on us attracting sufficient capability to deal with our recovery, do we have the opportunity to directly employ people from overseas? Because this is where we've got to. We're in a crisis, actually, because we have to get this work delivered and we haven't got the resource and capability within New Zealand to be able to do it. And there are just not enough roading engineers here. So can we go directly through that government process?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Your Worship. I think the approach that we're taking in the first instance is obviously one of the things that's going to be relatively unique to the East Coast over some other regions at the moment is the level of investment in the transportation network. So part of what we're looking at as an approach in the first instance is kind of packaging up some of the roles that we're going to need to deliver this program and looking to get out into the New Zealand market, because we're aware that some other organisations and regions are retrenching because there's less investment in the transport network. So we're going to look at that, but we'll also look at, we're going to have to look at an international approach as well. I think we're at the front end of something that's going to get worse in terms of there's simply not enough capacity, opportunity to talk about this with the Chief Executive of NZTA when she's here next week. I mean, part of the commitments that we're making to each other is not eating each other's lunch and, taking staff on. But we're just going to, I think we're going to see more pressure as the investment flows start going and we start ramping up the recovery. So it is going to become a critical issue, and we're going to have to look at some innovative approaches, I think, about where we secure the necessary workers from.
Well, we've just identified that we've lost 4, did I count? Yeah, 4. So that's a lot of positions to fill within New Zealand. So I think that perhaps we could take as an action to bring back to this committee how we're going to approach this. Thank you. My next question is around order in councils and consenting. It's disappointing to hear that that NZTA Waka Kotahi have the ability to be able to manage this better than what we have as local government. So I'd like to understand how we could overcome that and what that could look like, and who do we need to be talking to about being able to fast track consenting for fixing all of our damaged roads and bridges.
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, as Mr. Thu said, one of the things that's an active conversation with the Crown now through the Regional Recovery Agency that's raised that as one of the issues that we're going to need some support on.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is around the local procurement and meeting with the Hastings Business Association last night and their members, and talking to engineers and Hastings engineers. Are we working along all of our procurement from the design, a rebuild right through? Can we be reassured that our local engineering, civil engineers are getting the opportunity to be looking at designs of bridges and culverts at the moment?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'll start and I'll hand to Craig and get into the much more technical side of it. At a macro level, as you're aware from the conversations we've had around the procurement strategy that we're using in terms of the approach to market, we are in the market at the moment for $400 million pipelines of work. There's only, is it 11, Craig, 10 or 11 sort of firms that are kind of pre-qualified to do that, including eight main, including a number of local players. So the approach that's in the market now and the evaluation criteria is the stock standard stuff, price, methodology, track record. But one of the evaluation criteria is heavily focused on you need to demonstrate what you're doing in this community, the contribution to the community outcomes that we want. Tell us about your workforce. Tell us about what you're doing in terms of supporting, bringing rangatahi through, so that heavy, it's a heavy part of the criteria. And then Craig will talk about, some of your specific things around the local engineering and design, but also underneath that major big firm, there's a whole approach around packages of work that are supporting predominantly local firms that are smaller scale and what we call our B and C contractors, because there's so much work to do. But Craig, you can deal with some of the specifics.
Covered most of it. Probably just to add on the construction side. Also, RRA, the local councils, members of the RRA also met with TKO yesterday, just to go through around employment opportunities for locals in their particular rohe. And so the way that we've set up the panel contract is, to the Chief Executive's commentary, is yes, they'll have to talk to levels of local employees, so people who live here, their effects on housing if people are coming in, the nature of how they have been investing in the local community over the last few years. But it also talks to, once we've selected those preferred tenderers, the work we want to do with them around how we'll codify development pathways, employment, and investing into those wider outcomes for the community, but doing that in that final negotiations with a smaller group. Because one of the things you can't have is 8 to 10 suppliers running around talking to everyone, trying to organise things without commitment. And so we'll look to have those, and particularly pathways for employees. That's very much in the physical delivery side. I think the other part of your question, Your Worship, was around in that engineering design work. So the core of the work has been worked through just on the basis of speed and experience and used to working with particularly the NZTA guidelines. If you take bridge structures, for example, the core of that has been led through WSP, Stantec, GHD. They've done the core of that initial assessment stuff. There is work that's flowing through. So at the moment, as an example, the design build contract that's out for Matapero, there are local firms working with local suppliers in that mix. There hasn't been, we haven't, and we know the likes of, if I think of some of the, particularly the geotech ones, they're heavily involved supporting in terms of doing ground investigations, testing, both within the council but also inside Trek. So I was talking to one of the local geotech firms representatives on the tour. She's 2 or 3 days a week, fully working for Trek. So they may not, some of the smaller local engineering firms may not be taking a lead role, but there's a lot of input and support in there. And that was largely around just moving at pace with existing arrangements without having to re-procure things.
Just, Madam Chair, I'd like to have a recommendation, happy to do that after you have taken all the questions.
Thank you, Bishop. I'll come back to you when it's time to move recommendations. I'd like to now move on to Councillor Nixon.
Thanks, Chair. The question I've got relates to future-proofing. We've had significant discussions regarding bridges, so I don't want to cover that again, but I was just looking at the opening picture of the culvert, which presumably got washed out, and I just wondered, what is our approach, because we're told that, you know, storms may happen more often and be more violent. What is our ballpark approach to improving the capacity of particularly culverts, drains, that sort of thing? I mean, do we have an overall plan? Because that didn't look like, those pipes didn't look that big, actually. Yeah, you're opening that one, yes.
Apparently that one's huge. Deceiving photo.
It's not as big as the one that Marcus is going to get, though.
Mr. Fu.
So what is going back is best described as modern equivalent. If we lived in a dream world and money was less of an object, there will be a whole pile of other additional things that we would do which would add significant more resilience in terms of additional connections. You would, if I reflect on the meeting up with the Kiruru community, rather than replacing Kiruru Gorge, I'd do a bridge across the top, get rid of a dangerous bend, 2 dangerous bends, and have no culvert at all. I'd have a long bridge, but instead of 8 to 10 million, I'd be $130 million. And if you do that 400 times, there's just, so we don't live in that world. So it's an approach of modern equivalent. So all of the new bridges will be to the bridge code, but I've also said to the team, and there's some work on the plains that we can't move on until we understand the flood control, is I want the underside, the valley of bridges to all be above the top of a stop bank. So if there's an event of a Gabriel size, which is beyond design spec, the bridge would stand and we can just backfill dirt to each side. If I take that picture up there, so just there is one of the old culverts. There were 2 of them there and there, so that's how much further down this drop. That culvert is 1.9 metres in diameter, so you can walk down there without hitting your head. That is 3.5 metres big, more. If I take an example, the Kiruru Gorge one, and so we're designing to about a 1 in 100 year event with climate change. but that retaining wall, that this structure here is an engineered structure. So what happened on this one is the culvert got blocked up with a water tank. It built up water, the water went over the top, and then it just eroded the road away. So having a solid structure on either side also helps that if water does overtop, it's actually got more ability to hold back and not give way. And that's also designed to be able to hold all the water without blowing out like a plug, so it can actually take. We will be leaving this culvert in as a high level overflow, so if it gets debris building up in here, you have that flow. But that one culvert is designed to take in excess of a 1 in 100 year event. So we're doing those type of things as we work our way around. There are some sites we are very limited, and there are a number of bridge repairs that will be repairing the bridge as best we can, but it won't be making that bridge a modern equivalent. It's an active conversation that we were just having with Trek and their business cases on future-proofing work is this investment, and particularly as they're looking at lower cost investments versus higher cost ones, how do we describe to us as stakeholders in our community how close that investment gets to getting to a modern equivalent? So that's the approach to those.
I have to say, I didn't realise how big that was. It didn't look that big.
I think it was a good question to ask. It's clarified for everyone. Thank you, Councillor Nixon. I'll come over now to Councillor Badu.
Thanks. And listening to this conversation, one line in the report was Cyclone Gabrielle has changed the standard forever, and it was the largest flood on record at 13 of the sites measured, with a 1 in 1,000 year return. So it's crazy. Question for Craig on Salisbury. When the far rate potentially drops, and it's been great to have it there, and the work you and your team have done to support that community, and for example with the spiral and making sure, haven't had quite as many phone calls about stuck trucks since then. What does it drop down to?
So, in the world that we were living, because there are some announcements that I haven't had a chance to fully consume, which could. So, our normal fire rate is 53%. When you have an event to recent, when there's been an event of a certain scale, we get an additional 20, so we get 73%. So all of our budgeting moving forward in this cyclone has been 73% is our fire rate to respond to Cyclone Gabrielle. There was a special uplift with Cyclone Gabrielle with the Resilience Fund from the last government, which enabled us to get a 40%. So we've asked for another 13 million from NZTA at the 93% subsidy rate response to help fund the works on Salisbury and a number of other projects that do fit the criteria. We're just waiting for approval of that. However, there is active conversations and discussions that NZTA are having, looking at changing the threshold of when an event is big enough to get additional subsidy. And rather than it being a 20% uplift, a 10% uplift. So that has a significant ramification for New Zealand wide, but if we get quite self-centred, a material effect if that applies to us moving forward.
So the breaking news out of yesterday was the release of a proposal for consultation by NZTA that's been approved by their board, and obviously Your Worship, I'm imagining you and other regions leaders will, off the back of conversations with the Prime Minister and Ministers, then with Nicole Rosie next week, make views known. But as Mr. Thu, I mean, in essence, it's saying the board's consulting over the next 6 weeks on proposals to change the triggers for what defines an emergency event, attracting an enhanced fire rate from a current 1 in 10 to a 1 in 20, to reduce the fire rate from plus 20% to plus 10%, and restricting the provisions for getting any bespoke fire funding rate. So,
Effective 1 July.
Proposal.
Yep.
Bless.
That has some pretty significant implications.
That's a fairly horrifying update. Thank you, Chief. Yes, I'm sure we will be well across that. Our Mayor leading the charge. And on that depressing note, did you have any other questions?
I had a
Councillor Badu?
positive comment to make, but in the light of this news, it's probably not. I just wanted to thank you and your team, Craig, for the meeting at Kiradu, which wasn't an easy one, but it certainly helped that community understand and process what was going on. and settle them down and their fears about the future. And also the support that you and your team give to the community of Kiruru, for example, with logging trucks on Salisbury Road and a whole bunch of problems that matter very much to them, is hugely appreciated. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Vado. I'll come now to Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just from me, the roading infrastructure team's under huge may for the next 7 to 10 years. I've got interested in their health and wellbeing issues that they may have. What programs have we actually got in place to assist them when their workload pressures get too high?
There are a number of initiatives that organisations doing wide, but I also currently have that first and foremost that transport recovery team working through direct program just with them, with a coach and just to help them work through their organisational approaches, the above and below the waterline team dynamic elements, and then moving into the wider transport team. Just really keen as a business that we're quite clear and we're still managing two things in transport. There is a recovery, and it's really important that a person can stand on its own 2 feet. And so just setting up appropriate support structures and oversight just to help enable and keep an eye on that, but also with the wider transport team, because there is quite a strong interplay and we sort of can't drop either ball. So there is bespoke direct work with that team going on, and I'll be staying active and agile to that to manage the situation as it changes. I do need to note though that working with our wider market, we have brought in some really good people and secondments and support both in transport, but also the other item in this further on, which was Havelock North Streams and Dams, where we've pretty much contracted Darren de Klerk to take point and lead, which enables Mr. Cave and Craig Montfort to just more provide a client input and jet without actually having to manhandle those projects through. So we are also leveraging our wider partner. It's just some roles are better if we can own it internally.
Something we all have to be aware of all the time.
I'll take 2 more questions on this particular poll because I realise we have more to go through. Thank you, Councillor. You're on already.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, Craig, for that update, and I'd like to acknowledge all the work you and your team have done. I don't envy that task, and it seems like it's the gift that keeps on giving. You know, your road's getting damaged trying to fix up past issues. Cultural impact assessment and cultural value assessments. Acknowledge the words you problem about capacity, and I think I talked about this at a previous meeting. At the iwi, we don't do cultural impact assessments with intent, and try not to get involved in consents. I won't go into why, there's plenty of work around. However, we have been contacted to provide advice and even help and write from numerous. We had Kiwi Rail, Waka Kotahi, New Zealand Transport, and then Trek, and these works. There's a whole bunch, like the increase of this work, it was lacking capacity and capability before, so it really is. So just trying to get a grasp from all these consents and how many are actually out there. So I know I always say this too, or we need to have talk afterwards to see actually how many and kind of get an idea of it. Because there's also that interface of cultural impact. So I say we don't do them, but there's an interface of the environmental assessment reports as well. So we do, although we don't do them, we do have expectations and standards. And one of the high ones is that obviously where this may occur, that mana whenua have the opportunity, of course, if they've got the capability to do it themselves, or they endorse whoever does it. But another big focus for us that sometimes falls through the gaps is the mahinga kai and fish passage. So we can do it in emails or fair 5 minutes. I just want to really have a grasp on the quantity and spatially the demands for these assessment reports, and I'm trying to be careful not put my hand up for work, but how we can assist and maybe with some efficiency and quality.
I think that sounds like a really valuable offline conversation.
Yeah, and
Mr.
probably
Hurst.
just to acknowledge that,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, is absolutely, and the process we're just going through at the moment, is there are one-on-one conversations with each of the PSG leads, and then looking to talk, getting them all into a room just to talk about the scale of it, some potential approaches, because doing this one at a time, no one can cope with and perhaps isn't the right thing. So how can we get a degree of common things like global approaches or global accepted standards around fish passage, discovery protocols, key things to check, but there's always going to be site-specific checks that need to be placed, particularly around sites of interest. So we're just trying to work through with that direct group, how do we do this in the most efficient and effective, not make a mistake, but also not boil the ocean if we don't need to do 1,000 reports about the same thing.
Yes, so maybe there are some parts or components of these assessments that, you know, we can join in the conversation. Try not to promise too much in expectations, but yes, it's
recognise that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You raise a very good point in terms of resourcing across all levels. I'll come now to Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Chair. We've just had a 1 in 1,000 year event. Has there been a reset on what 1 in 100 means in terms of resilience? And is the culvert that we saw in that photograph being redesigned for 1 in 100 as we knew it before the cyclone or since?
The work that NIWA did has reassessed what a return period is in terms of flow and river. And every time you have an event, it changes that return period a bit. And I think 1 in 1,000 is the scale of the event was different all over the Motu. So some areas may have had a 1 in 5, some areas a 1 in 100, some areas a 1 in 1,000. So the advice we're still getting from GNS is if we in NIWA is for Hawke's Bay. That 1 in 100 plus climate change is still not too far away from our reality moving forward. We will always still have a chance of events that are bigger than those. And a lot of the design thinking back to is what happens when there's more water and do you lose control when there's more water? And how much control do you lose and how fast can you bring it back? Because we cannot design out and make all the infrastructure stand permanently. So it's around how much of an event can it do, and if you do have an event that's more, and that's an active conversation the RRA Infrastructure Power having with HBRC flood control. Like what happens when it's bigger than design, and can you lose control in a controlled way to recover? So at the moment, that culvert's designed for in excess of 1 in 100 with climate change. I don't have the absolute number. The more critical the route, the bigger the return period we're pushing forward, because obviously the consequence of loss is larger.
I do have a second question related to the 800 million roads and bridges, etc., which has been there since the very start. How much of that has already been spent, and how much is in the budget for the next 3 years?
So 800 is a nice rounded number. So we're predicting to spend close to 150 million by the end of this financial year. If you look at escalations to the end of our 10-year plan, which we have investment stopping at the end of year 7, it gets close to $1 billion once you add the low level of escalation that we have from Burl indicators. It's about 900 and something million. I don't have exactly the number over the next 3 years, but I can grab that if necessary. It's about 100 million a year in recovery across bridges, roads, culverts.
I had said that I was going to cut off questions for this part, but I will come to Councillor Apatu and then Councillor Harvey if you can be very quick. Thank you.
Try and be quick here. It's building on the recommendation around best practice procurement and some discussions bubbling along from various councillors, and the utilisation of local contractors, businesses, and also supporting our local Māori businesses, contractors.
that may not necessarily meet that category A, I think that you hinted at, Craig, and how we bring them along. And then there's some procurement documentation that may say involve local and involve Māori. Then how do we monitor? How do we keep our eyes on that they're being true to what they did say as part of their procurement process?
Through you, Chair, excellent question, and a key part of the conversation. So, as I mentioned before, if I just talk through that big panel contract where we're looking to pick 3 or 4 suppliers who may do something depending on performance and sticking to commitments and quality and cost, they may do something like $80 to $100 million worth of work through those engagements. So to get onto that table, yes, the lead contractor needs to be a complex A roading contractor, of which there's about 11, but looking at the tender box, there's about 8 who are actively participating. In there, as we've talked about, there are a number of attributes that they have to put forward around what they're committing to get to the negotiation phase. Originally, when we were going to go to market, we were trying to see about how we could codify those outcomes early, and it was really, really difficult. And what we decided was, well, let's get players who we can confidently work with, and then prior to signing, and working across the groups and working with, having meetings with Karen Bartlett from MSD, and then sort of now picking up, following on conversation with TKO. In that negotiation phase, that's where I see we codify what the commitments are, and then they will be actively monitored. And one of the conversations is, and feelings, and we don't know if it'll work, is actually how we may even use MSD to help monitor some of those things, particularly around the training opportunities. But we also have to be careful that we don't hold a contractor or suppliers to something that they don't control fully. So that's why we just need to do that negotiation in that phase at that time. But that's all stuff that I would fully expect, you expect for me to put in a report when we sign off that contract, because you'll want to see that. And then in subsequent performance and monitoring, you'd want to see performance against those metrics. So not only are they delivering on cost, they're delivering on quality and time, they're delivering on those wider outcomes they've committed to play. One of the items, and I presented to civil contractors, Hawke's Bay, just recently, one of the challenges we do have, and it's a discussion we raised with NZTA from a funding stream, but also with government officials, is to truly leverage the value of the pipeline and to say, yes, you've got $80 million of work. I need to have confidence and commitment of the money being there. I cannot expect a contractor to buy a whole pile of plant, to start a whole pile of training proposals on giving $3 million and $3 million and $3 million, but maybe not many money after that. So actually having a funding pipeline that is really locked and loaded, and it's something that I raised with some Treasury officials back a bit. They said, oh, do you know about pipelines? And I said, yes, I do, but I do know about giving committed funding, because actually that's what New Zealand needs, but we really need to leverage the outcomes and to be efficient, is actually lock and loading long-term funding plans without having to bid for every little one each time, because it just creates uncertainty in the process. For us and our partners across RRA, I know CHB are working through that, and then getting late funding approval, and then having to spend money really, really fast, that never gets those wider, longer-term enduring outcomes.
Right, Councillor Harvey.
Craig, you always give such detailed answers and responses to things. I'm a little bit scared to actually now ask the question. We've gone through the great jib shortage in New Zealand, and one of the costs of the 800 million is going to be materials and supplies, and we've already seen restrictions in particular areas of quarries or materials. How are we managing that? And do we see price escalations if there isn't localised accessibility to those materials?
And I will challenge a brief of that to answer as you can.
You're right, that is a key area that we need to manage and focus on. At the moment, we're not too uncomfortable. There are a couple of bridges we'd like to strengthen so we can access quarries. It's a key conversation for the RRA because our program's only one part. When we're busy at full speed, if we can get all the funding lined up, we'd be doing something like 4 to 5 million a month. Trek across the East Coast will be doing 20 a month. So it's actually, as a region, actually understanding and planning that resources. So it's something that we're not uncomfortable with, but it is a risk that we're actively monitoring, but it's a key one that the region has to manage collectively.
Thank you for that. Well done, you survived your grilling. Oh, carry on.
Through you, Chair, Diane will talk more fully in communications, but probably just to reiterate the conversation before, I think we're really just starting to find a really nice symbiosis between the Community Connectors team, as Kirsten's talked about, the comms team, and that transport team, and just that's working really well. And soon to be released, and Di can show it a little bit later, is the new website, which moving on from just a list of all the slips in the work to actually visually be able to click on a culvert or click on a slip, see when it's programmed, what stage it's in design. So there will be a tab for each of the rural wards. They'll continue to get their newsletters, which Di will talk to. So that's working really well, but we're getting a lot of positive feedback even for the website as it stands, in terms of providing best understanding of timing. The one that I have asked the team to look at that doesn't exist yet is actually providing an update to the community around our inspection process and repairs, just to show that we're actually going out checking things, and then talk through when conditions change, because conditions will change after each event, and we might need to reprioritise. So someone might have something in June 26, but it gets reprioritised to June 25 or June 28. So lots of good work going on. Havelock Streams, via Darren's project management, that wider strategy work is progressing. A lot of good work. The surveys have largely been completed across the streams to help with hydraulic analysis. The emergency response work's being underway. So lots of bits are all progressing as per plan on that work. The shares are slide to be shared, so we can just give that, and there's an update on there. So lots of stuff going on. To be fair, the team are also having to spend time responding to community requests and responses to the Ombudsman, which is a distraction, but just one of those things of being local government.
Mayor Hazelhurst.
Are you ready to take our recommendation? No.
Where are we at in our presentation, team?
We've got comms and finance in building.
Okay.
Okay, I'll say wait
I will
till the
come back
end.
to you.
Just in terms what I've got my question up, Madam Chair. In terms of, you talk about requests from the community. Are we satisfied that our impacted communities in Havelock North, who have been impacted by the streams, are getting the full communication that they need about next steps of the journey?
Excellent question.
Yes, there's actually a specific project manager looking after the 2C area and inside of the wider strategy program, and Di is probably better to talk to the newsletters and updates that are going through.
Yeah, shortly. Yeah, when I'm told.
Okay. I'll get you to turn on your microphone if you would. Thank you.
Havelock North Dams and Streams does have its own committed communications resource. We have 4 audiences. The 2C people get one-on-one contact plus regular written updates to their emails. They're very happy. I'm absolutely confident that that's going well. Streamside residents, that's a relatively new list that we've got, that Mikey's got for us, so we can reach everybody living very close to those streams around the wider strategy, and get in touch with those that the team needs to talk to around specific things that they may be responsible for or council needs to do on their property, and those people, when we need to have those conversations, get one-on-one. We have wider Havelock North, so we utilise media releases. We do so many that they're not picking a hell of a lot up, but for us it's about talking to the community, and that goes through the partner, especially the social media stuff, through Fiona Fraser, through Love the Village, through, and then we have the whole community, which gets less, but then, you know, that's as it should be, the core people at the front. But we're getting really good feedback. Nikki Solomon is one of our sounding boards. She's happy with the amount of, but the only person that I know of who is not happy is probably never going to be happy. So, right. And we'll move on. Any questions on Havelock North?
Questions on Havelock North? No? Okay, we'll carry on, Di.
Really, really happy.
There's a tour next week.
Yes, there is, and
Yes.
there's and the drop-in for the community, which we're working on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councillor Kerr.
Although it's not in my area, I'm really aware that an individual or a small group is putting out what I believe is incorrect information.
It is incorrect, yes.
Okay, it is incorrect information. I'm really interested how we are dealing with that, because I find it very, very frustrating to read a newspaper or to receive an email that is factually incorrect and calling us out for things that are just not truthful.
We have in the past gone to the Advertising Standards Authority. It was and continues to be unfortunate that they won't look at those advertisements until an ongoing ombudsman's investigation is completed. Where are we up to? Do we know where that's up to?
Information's about to, further information's going
So
into.
yeah, I mean, we are. Our main thing is to make sure those most impacted, those who live in Havelock North, have the correct information. We cannot control advertising in a independent publication. As I said, we've tried the Advertising Standards Authority. They want to wait for the Ombudsman. We have to wait for the Ombudsman. I think we've pushed every button we can, and what I would say is that the misinformation is getting very little traction. It is frustrating and annoying to see it so publicly displayed. And the other interesting thing is that potentially every line item is not necessarily incorrect. It is it's how it's joined together, and there is information there that will become relevant under the new PIC system that has been framed as something that was in force prior to Cyclone Gabrielle, and so it's misinformation in the way that it's been all tied together. So just bear with us as we very tightly keep in touch with our community so that they know what the real story is.
I guess the question that I would be asking at a high level is, are we doing as much as we can with the appropriate channels and upholding the manner of this organisation, I think is probably the frame.
Doing our level best. I don't know what else we could do. I'm happy to take advice. As I said, our focus is on talking to those people most impacted to make sure they have the facts. I mean, the only thing we don't do is take an equivalent ad out in the paper and go line by line. But we've done that previously. I mean, it just doesn't stop. So, how much money do we want to throw into doing what we've done before, which didn't work, which didn't stop the issue?
Thank you for the confidence that those who are impacted, though, are being kept informed. I think that's the most important aspect.
Generally, transport, since our last presentation, really wrapped to have Aileen Campbell on board. One of the tough points for us has been getting the information from the broad transport team without putting too much of a load on them when they're trying to do the doing. Aileen is a conduit between comms and the transport team. She's up there, she can see who's available, who can give us information. What I do want to show you, and it's been trickier than we'd hoped, is this, yes, that one. This will be live by the end of today. At this stage, you can zoom right in. Yeah, you can zoom right in, but you do rely at this stage on the key at the side. You cannot click on a point and get information. That is next level, which IT is working on, and it's about trying to drag.
You can click on the dots though.
You can click on the dots, yes. Yeah, and the other one is the dashboard, which will also be live today. Tomorrow it does need a few tweaks to the wording, which I'll sort out today. And so that will be on the front page of the website. What we've still yet to do, and IT are working on, is doing that division between the wards so that it divides that way as well. It's a resourcing issue and just having enough people to do it all. Well, it's a way for us to sort. We have to have a way to sort it rather than just have a whole pile of information on the front page. It just makes it chunkable. Yeah, and it's also a way to measure where. It also means that we widen our regular comms as well, and it answers that question around our comms being a little bit too tight at the moment. I believe we send out communications to 23 communities. Personally, I'd like to see that into 4 rural wards. Less resource, more information. People can see what's happening across their ward rather than just in their little tiny tight bit.
And you're also working on the general one.
Oh, and the general one that goes out every 6 to 8 weeks.
Thank you for that, Mike.
And that's probably it.
Not a
Oh,
question,
sorry,
but
no.
fantastic.
And there's I'll leave you to read this. You may have already read it. This is from February, but we haven't had a chance to update you in the meantime. This is, oh yeah, I can do this. This is a list of the commemorations and things we did in February, which feels like a long time ago now, but it was very comprehensive, very well received, and we're very pleased that at the amount of effort from all of the teams. We're not a PO lead, obviously. We work with all the PO leads, all the teams, and the uptake by the public and the various sectors in the commemorations that we had in February.
Excellent. All right. Yes.
Any questions? And I'm happy to.
Oh, sorry,
question.
Councillor Kerr.
It's really impressive to read those lists, that list of sponsors, and just want to understand how have we acknowledged them?
Good question.
I would need to come back to you on that. I just need to check with Vicky Roebuck.
Yeah.
We'll get that info back.
Because cumulatively, they have made a huge difference.
Impact, yes, absolutely. And I'm sure she has, but I just need to confirm how that was done.
Okay, can you report that back to Her Worship the Mayor's office?
Yes,
That
absolutely.
would be great, thank you.
We'll do that.
Through you, Madam Chair, could we put that in My Hastings?
Yes, absolutely.
And so the wider community can see?
Yes,
Excellent
absolutely.
idea. All right, Gus, who's up next?
I'm building.
As we're all aware, recovery is not a small task, and we have many parties reporting to us. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, team. So look, we're making some good progress both with our internal work and out in the field. So I've just got some general stats up there in terms of our affected buildings and where our placard numbers are at. So you'll see we've got 22% back into their homes, or either back into their homes or demolished, which is pretty good. I think at the 12-month mark we were sitting around 17%. So another 5% in a couple of months is we're on track to sort of do a bit better in the next 12, 24 months. And then we'll just shift on to the next slide. So just quickly in terms of building consenting, so we have approved 86 building consent applications which are related to cyclone damaged buildings. 120 in total have been received. In September and November of 2023, we issued some building consent guidance for residential and commercial building consents, respectively, in categorised areas. So it's been a bit of a process getting to this point now, but we have, in line with our guidance and building consent applications, are to be reviewed by an independent panel consisting of a building surveyor, an engineer, and a lawyer. So the applications that have been sent away are for both Pakowhai and Waihiki at this stage, and we have recently received some advice back, which is looking relatively positive for Pakawai and Waiuhiki in terms of being able to issue building consents. The issue being obviously the Building Act sets limitations for land which is subject to natural hazard, and in this case categorised land. There's obviously still a risk there as per HBRC's advice. So it's been a bit of a process getting to this point, but it's looking really positive for those who are wanting to undertake building work in those areas. Obviously it comes with limitations which we'll need to run through with the applicant. We won't get into those details here. So that's really good. What is also quite positive is we have been able to issue building consents in Category 3 land, again in line with our building consent guidance document, and that is for the likes of ablution blocks, toilet blocks on the land out there, so people that are working the land aren't expected to travel into town to make a cup of tea. So that's really good. So that's about it from me, if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions? No, thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And last but definitely not least, we thought we'd just give you a quick update on the overall financial picture in terms of what we're spending across recovery and what we're recovering from other sources. Thanks, Jess.
Welcome, Jess.
Well, I'll keep this short and sweet. Just a couple of key things we wanted to talk to you about with the financial update. As you can see, it looks pretty good, but it's a little bit deceptive in that we've received a lot of funding up front, especially in the Category 3 buyout area from Crown Infrastructure Partners. We've also got within the infrastructure resilience area the Better Off funding received at the end of start of last month, which we're going to allocate out because it relates to spending last year across infrastructure resilience, Whānau community resilience, and Three Waters and transport within infrastructure resilience. The infrastructure resilience funding also includes the 21.6 million we've received from CIP for roading, and with the upfront sort of funds coming in the Cat 3 buyout, it's been really useful for cash flow purposes as well. We haven't had to draw down as much loans yet to pay for the property purchases and settlements that have gone through in that area, so that's been really useful. And then Whānau community resilience, so we're expecting more costs to come through there. A lot of that funding was received up front as well for Red Cross grants and a few other grants that were received in that area. So yes, that's probably the key messages to get across there, if anybody's got any questions in that space.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor Nixon first.
Just the money, I can't help notice the buyout. Perhaps I don't quite understand it. So we've spent 4.7 million, is that right, so far, but we've completed, roughly half the discussions. It seems quite a lag. I mean, what's the story?
Yeah, Councillor, it's the so we've over 50% with the offers made, but we haven't settled that amount. I think we've settled around 15% or so. That's at that stage, and it's only when we settle that we pay. So that's why you're seeing that smaller figure.
I can understand that. Sort of, what is the expected timeline for catching up on that? Because it just seems an awfully big lag to me. Because people will be waiting for money. That's what worries me more than anything. That
I think through you, Madam Chair, and Gus, you might just give a couple of examples without, because a lot of this goes to individual circumstances. You know, we've had, because I sign all of these, some that are looking for quick settlements, but in a lot of cases, people want to, they've got a bunch of things to sort out, and so the settlement dates are actually determined by, the individual's, concern.
That's right. So it's a huge variation. Some people, as soon as they've received the offer, the next day or within a couple of days, they accept the offer, and we turn it around quite quickly, and then they're settled sort of maybe even within the month. some people, when they receive the offer, are actually sitting on them up to 3 months. At which point we are sort of gently asking, you know, where they're at with their consideration, and if they've got good reasons why they want to consider that further, then we'll extend the period. And then if they accept at that point, then they could also request a long settlement period. So that it's a real variation, variation in timings between offers out to settlement.
So we're not holding anything up.
Excellent. Any other questions? Councillor Kerr.
I have a series of questions, not to the financials though, but probably more to Gus on a slightly different topic.
Okay, before we do that then, are there any other financial questions? No, take the floor, Councillor Kerr.
Okay, so I should have picked this one up through the building update, but I didn't find my notes. There's a comment around designation, and it says the designation for the remaining 29 suburbs remain in place, and they were designated under subpart 6 of the Building Act. I don't actually know what that means. Somebody able to help?
Is Sam still here?
I think she's disappeared.
That's okay. We'll take that offline, and we'll come back and answer that for you, Councillor.
Just in general,
so
high level, Cameron?
I'm an amateur at a lot of things, including building officers. I can't give you the technicals, but it's emergency provisions for consenting under the legislation. So, and it gives particular additionality of powers as required to the building consenting team. That's probably as far as I can go, and they've seen a reason to keep those designations in place in particular areas. So.
Thank you.
If you need more information,
no,
I'll get it to you.
That was, I just needed clarity on that. And the other one, Gus, is as we go through the buyout, is there a risk coming that there will be land that we don't buy for whatever reason that becomes a wasteland, a risk? Somebody's essentially walking away, won't pay their rates, take whatever opportunities there are, and are we going to get scattered across our community areas like this? Maybe the silt's not cleared, the house is not demolished. Is there a risk in that happening?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I think yes, it is a risk. There is, as councils will be aware, that only properties under 2 hectares is council offering the full property purchase. So only properties under 2 hectares will we own. In some cases, those property owners of under 2 hectare properties are still choosing to retain their land because their EQC, the way the calculations work, the EQC payment was so large that it makes financial sense for them to retain the EQC payment and retain the land. So the land that we expected that we would own is much less than we had thought we would own. So there will be little blocks out there that people have decided to keep, and there's certainly the blocks that are over 2 hectares. I think those blocks that were already in commercial use, they're great. I don't think we have too many concerns for those. But there will be a subset of those over 2 hectare blocks that were used for lifestyle purposes, where the owners are now will need to think about what commercial use that they can put those blocks into. I don't think it's particularly a concern at Pakawhai because there wasn't much silt and it's productive soil if water can be made available. But you know, I think the key area of concern would probably be Esk, I think. Yeah.
Just noting that that's seen as a gateway to Hawke's Bay, it is a concern for me, and I wouldn't mind if somebody can just have a think about how the risk might be mitigated. I don't know if we have bylaws that say you've got to keep your place in a tidy order or anything like that. I'm not suggesting we rush in and buy it. It's more around how do we reduce the risk of a tatty site at the gateway to Hawke's Bay that might be surrounded by other beautiful areas.
It's a valid concern, Councillor Kerr. I think we'll take that away as an action for exploration.
Yeah,
thank you. Okay. Is that all, Gus? Thank you. All right, well, on that basis, I'd like to come back to Mayor Hazelhurst around the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. So we're still on item 5, although I see we swung into item 6 as well.
Yes.
But you're on item 5.
Yes, that's
So,
right.
I mean, I just need to bring to everybody's attention that announcement that Craig and the Chief Executive just talked about, because that adds a further $60 million impact between 63% financial assistance rate and 73% financial assistance rate. Now, it is simply unaffordable for our ratepayers to add another $60 million onto our recovery. And we're going to have to look at this really carefully. Unless there's going to be a government resilience grant, and we haven't heard of anything like that through a budget. So this is serious. This is seriously really challenging for us, so we're going to have to look at our work programs, and we're going to have to look at how we deliver the rebuild for our community, because this impact is significant. We cannot go out and ask for another $60 million to repair our roads and bridges to our community. So this is what we've just heard from the NZTA board, and we will be talking with the board chair, with the minister, and this is simply unaffordable for our community. This impacts Hastings the most. So I just want to put the seriousness out here of this is Hastings. This is not a wider regional recovery agency. This is us and how we are going to pay for our repairs and our rebuild. So we're doing very well in our recovery, buyouts, etc., but the massive challenge for us now is the rebuild of our transport network. And clearly this is going to have enormous challenge for us, for our community, for our region's GDP. So I need to put that out straight away. In terms of us now setting out 4 times $100 million worth of packages of work to go out there, we've got to take this and look at this really carefully, because everything is impacted, because we pretty much thought we would get emergency financial assistance rate. So I need to give some governance oversight in terms of how we are managing what we do next. And I'd like a recommendation, Madam Chair. A governance advisory oversight group is established, including an independent expert to oversee the delivery of our transport network rebuild. And that is to make sure that we're getting the best value for our ratepayers as we rebuild, and what is going to be the impact without that extra 10%, and what can we deliver and what can't we, and have representatives of our communities most impacted on that advisory. So that is my recommendation to add as a 2.4 to these recommendations.
Thank you, Worship.
Do I have a seconder?
I was just about to call for that. Do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder? Oh, lots of seconders. I will take the first person I looked at, which was Councillor Watkins. So what we will do is I'd like to give our amazing democratic support team a moment to craft this up, and actually we're very overdue, I think, for a wharepaku break. So what I'm going to do is adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes while everyone has a quick break, and we will return and put the motion then. So we will adjourn now for 15 minutes.
Madam Chair, we're still online.
Okay, team, up on the screen at the moment we have the revised recommendations, including the amendment that's been put forward by Mayor Hazelhurst and seconded by Councillor Watkins. I'll just ask the mover and the seconder to have a quick look at that and then nod their agreeance if they're happy with that. I'll give everyone a moment just to have a look themselves. Thank you. Okay, I will open it up for any comments or debate, and then we will move into the voting. So do we have any comments or debate around the amended recommendations? No? Excellent. Okay, well, we have a motion on the table, so I'm going to put that. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, we'll now move on to item...
Madam Chair, just apologies from Damon and I for lateness, and Damon will be a few more minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kerr. All right, we'll now move on to item 6, which is the Category 3 property voluntary buyout, demolition and disposal. And I welcome again Gus, but also David this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, I'll take the paper as read, but I'll just take you through, David and I thought we'd take you through a couple of slides just to summarise the pertinent points of the paper. So we're moving through the Category 3 voluntary buyout really well. Now we're moving into a new phase, the demolition part of the phase. So the first demolitions will take place, we've actually partly taken place today. So the asbestos removal of the property started this morning, and the demolition of that property, which is 181 Gilbertson Road, which was the first property to be settled by council. So we think that's quite symbolic, will take place mid next week. We have a demolition services panel in place. That's 4 demolition providers. When we were going through our documentation, we realised actually we'd never formally sought a budget for the demolition to come out of the 50 million that's been set aside for the Category 3 voluntary buyout. So the purpose of this discussion, the paper, is to formally seek approval to spend up to $10 million from the $50 million that's been set aside from the Category 3 budget. Did Craig want to say something?
Yes, Mr Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just make the point here that it's within this committee's delegations if it chooses to allocate this budget for the demolition, because the money has already been allocated in your LTP. So the committee is not, if it's subject to its decision, will not be allocating new unbudgeted funds. It is within this delegation to allocate budget funds.
Thank you for that process clarification. All right, Gus, I'll come back to you. Do you have anything else you and David wanted to add at this point?
Yeah, just a couple of quick points. So you may remember on 5 December we took you through the action plan, the removal of dwellings and post-acquisition land management. So we're well into, and you adopted that action plan. So we're well into implementing that. Those forecasts that we had in that action plan suggested that the cost of demolition would be between $5 and $7 million. We have done, David and the team have done considerably more detailed work at a property level since December, early this year, and which now suggests that the cost of demolition will be between $10 and $12 million. The key reasons for that was just the complexity of the demolition of some of the properties and the level of asbestos that is in some of the properties. We did flag that to you in February that we were at that point still working through the level of asbestos and some of the complexity that would be required in some of the demolition. Thankfully, we have enough at this particular point, based on financial forecasts, to pay for that out of the 50 million that's been set aside for the Category 3. I'll just take you through. If I can get this working. Sorry, team. So you asked a question before, I think Councillor Nixon, just on the cash flow, on how we were spending the money. So at this particular point, it looks like that in about September, we will technically breach the $50 million cap. So we will have transacted most of the properties. We are estimating that there is around $3 million potentially available to us in selling and disposing the property category 3 properties that we will own, do own now and will own. And so we've accelerated that part of our work, because if we need that the sales from those proceeds to bring us in just under the 50 million cap. So the forecasts assume at the moment that the whole program, with demolition included, demolition costs, and including the realisation of disposal, will come in at around 48 million. So those are our best estimates at this particular point. The only other point I want to make is the demolition is a really critical part of the program. That's where we're trying to remove the intolerable risk to life. The intolerable risk to life resides in the dwelling. It resides in people being able to live in these dwellings. So it's a key responsibility. We're not achieving the full objective of our work unless we demolish these dwellings. We are doing it sensitively. We're working with the property owners to ensure that we are doing it respectful. We're giving them the opportunity to say goodbye, to say their last wishes. Some of them will want to take the opportunity to do that, and some of them won't want to. So it's an exciting new phase of the work, and we can report to you on how that's going at the next meeting. The first one partially is happening this morning, and then the full demolition of that property is mid next week.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to questions now. So I will come first to Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, in our early discussions when we were talking about demolition, we were talking about physical demolition and the possibility of some buildings being able to be removed and relocated. How have you, firstly, are there buildings that are able to be removed? How have you factored that in? Because I want to understand whether we would expect some positive cash flow from that. So I just want to understand that process, please.
We identify we do a pre-settlement inspection and a post-settlement inspection, and we identify then whether a property can be moved or not. So Danny and his team go out as well, and also with the owner discuss whether it can be moved, and then we go around. We've got 4 removal companies that we can pitch it to and get their ideas on whether it can be done or not, physically done, and whether it's worth it to them effectively, cost-wise. We have one property already identified that can be removed. We've had an offer of some $5,000, I think, to do that. So what we've done in the forecasting is assume 0. So that's worst case scenario, because I like to come in under budget. So anything that we get is a bonus and won't be a demolition cost. So we do actively identify, then put it to the removal companies to see if it can be achieved and it's worthwhile, and then talk to the owner.
Okay, so it's pretty insignificant.
Yeah, we don't know at this stage. Some can be moved, some can't, some are too damaged to be moved. A lot are on concrete floors, but are worth, the top story's worth some money and some aren't. So with each property, we look at each one to see what we can get back for the ratepayer.
Because I understand there has been significant vandalism in some of those homes, which devalues it, and that possibility diminishes. So, okay, I'm happy with your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. I'll come now to Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at 3.4 of the C, the disposal of and sale of Category 3. Is this land going to be available for a bulk buying or a bulk purchase? Because they're small packages and they won't be economical units. Is there any way of making them economical units?
Unfortunately not. Initially, when we went into it, we thought, like you are thinking, this might be a useful opportunity to aggregate land and take several parcels, aggregate them and take them to market. Unfortunately, what we have is just a pockmarked series of under 2 hectare, as you say, mostly subscale sub-economic blocks, which is why we're purchasing them in outright in the first place. So there might be the odd opportunity where we can take some fences down and there's a contiguous area, but it's pretty minor in the scheme of things, unfortunately.
And finally, congratulations on the quality of your report, both of you.
Yeah.
Very good and very easy to follow. Great presentation from you both. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Dixon. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at 4.11 and the HDC cash flow versus 50 million cap. We're obviously reliant on the sale of the land to keep us below that 50 million cap. So I'm just interested to know, have we gauged the interest in the sale of the land? I mean, is it easily saleable?
We keep a register. We do receive phone calls in the VBO from particularly next door neighbours, but also other interested parties. So we keep a spreadsheet of interested parties in particular parcels of land. Notwithstanding that, of course, we will be opening it up to everybody to get the maximum return we can for the ratepayer. But we do have interested parties that we have logged that we go through. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're just working through that process at the moment, but in simple terms, it will be some kind of expressions of interest. So we'll let the public know, probably via the newspaper and digitally, that these lots are coming up, and we'll seek expressions of interest, and then we have developed some criteria which we'll finalise in order to make some decisions. We won't be making decisions. We'll be doing the paper. You have provided that delegation to the CE as long as the property meets 80% of its value. So we'll seek that authority from Nigel.
Okay, so there is a good level of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, it is going, as you say, it's going to be really interesting because we have the valuations of the properties based on whether they've got a residential right to build on them and without it. And so, but in many cases, that value without the residential right may still assume that it has water, for instance, and many of these blocks may not have water rights, which will restrict their ability to be truly productive. We are talking to Hawke's Bay Regional Council about that. So the market will tell us quite quickly what they think these lots are worth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Can you just remind me what was the average that we were looking at for demolition per building, and what is it now, and what does it equate to now?
I think it was about 33,000, and now it's about 55,000. I think from memory.
I think Jim Palmer's original paper had it at 30.
Sorry.
Jim Palmer's original paper had it at 30,000 per property.
And now it's 50.
55.
Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Lawson's question. Different land uses would have different land value. Is there anything we can do to enhance the value of the land before we dispose of it? Because if it was going to be in apples, maybe it's worth a lot more in cropping and that sort of thing. Are we doing anything? Can we do anything?
We will have some minimal options. I think the main option is the extent to which we spend extra money to remediate the land, so that the owners are coming in, and it's a bit turnkey for them to make some productive use out of it. The alternative is to sell it at a discount, so that the new owners then undertake any remediation that's required in order to get it to a productive state. But we'll work through that and bring some advice to council on that, because obviously any further work we do comes with a dollar tag.
Yeah, I'm sort of interested in premiums rather than discounts.
Yeah.
We do leave, like if it's got particular buildings that may be of future use, like large shedding and so forth, we won't demolish those. We'll leave them there to try and make the land worth more. So, yeah.
Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Chair. I see the assumption is to dispose of 40 properties. That 40, is that all of the properties that we have available for disposal, or is it a percentage?
It's not all of the properties. So we have essentially concluded the first step of the disposal process and internal process. So we've asked key council teams and infrastructure teams and whether there is a potential operational or strategic use for the land. The roading team has identified some sites that it would be useful to hold for a short period while we work through roading options in different areas. And so we will hold those. And so we do need to go through a process of talking to Trek, Unison, other lifeline providers, just to make sure that there aren't any other regional infrastructure reasons why that land should be made available for that purpose. So that's the next step for us.
So I guess the question I'm asking is that assuming that we will sell all the properties that we want to sell within that time frame?
Yeah. Oh, that's that September lip is not including all of the proceeds. It's just some of the proceeds. I'd need to check with finance to work out how much of the proceeds, but they'd sort of scaled the proceeds coming in from September through to the start of next year.
Councillor Hickey.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. My pātai is, how are we supporting our landowners who have had the lowest possible market price offer, and then we're trying to maximise a return on land investments? How are we managing that
the lowest price offer?
Pardon?
I'm not sure about the lowest price offer. Where does that come from?
So I received information from Cat3, just in the sense that, the offers that from Hazy District Council have been of a low market rate, and then, if that be the case, and then we demolish a property, and then we're trying to maximise the return on that land.
Councillor Hickey, I think the thing I'll point to is the VBO process that we signed off on as council, which ensured that fair valuations were being made and fair offers were being made. No one has tried to lowball anyone in this process. And in fact, any returns that we will yield on land will be for the ratepayer and significantly lower, I suspect, than what was paid out. But I will ask for Gus and David to reply to that.
And for you, Chair, thank you for their response. My question, part of that is then, are we ensuring that we're following the policy to support the best outcome?
Yeah, I will pass that to the team.
Yeah, so what has worked well and we're really proud of is that the valuation is undertaken by independent valuers. Council has no role in establishing that value. That value then goes on to become the basis of the offer. So we just so it's nice and clear, we appoint a council valuer. Property owners can then appoint their own valuers, and then those two valuations come together, and John Reid, our valuation manager, who's an independent valuer, reviews both of those based on the evidence that sits in those valuation reports, the market evidence. Also, really importantly, values that have already been established for like land in areas, because as we've gone through the program, we have built up very, very clear, established very clear values for the cost of land in Pakawhai, the cost of land in Tongoio, all through it. And one of our key, one of the key things we're trying to ensure is that there is a consistency of offers. That one property owner is getting the same. That when John looks at these valuations, these neighbours aren't getting completely different offers based on wildly different valuations, just because different valuers have come at it differently. Yeah. So we're really proud that what we have tried to get is real clear consistency across the offers. From time to time, there will be frustration among some property owners who feel as though their valuation that they have conducted, that they're not getting their valuation. And that is not how the process works. The two valuations are brought together. It's evidence base is really, really clearly interrogated, and then the council offer is based on the market value of that land, not the council desired value of that land or anything, actual market value of that land.
Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you. Just a very appropriate headline above your graph, HDC cash flow versus $50 million cap. So just a typo, more than happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon, for your eagle eyes. Can I have a seconder? I have a mover. Can I have a seconder for the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Just to confuse me, Dixon and Nixon. Thank you. All right, do we have any further questions? No, before I put the motion, I would just like to echo Councillor Dixon's earlier comments and acknowledge the VBO's ongoing work and the efforts being made, not just to get a good outcome for those who have been affected in our community, but also for our ratepayer who's invested in this buyout. So thank you. All right, I will put the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Apatu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a little piece of discomfort, and I know it was a consensus that we approved the demolition costs, the policy, but you know, as I read it again and then hear about each individual demolition cost, you know, these things are adding up, and I know I'm not going to sway any decisions, and I'm not saying that, but it is the discomfort of the cost, yes, to us. I just felt like needed to say it.
That's duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Apatu. Okay, on that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Anyone else? No. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. All right, we will now move on to item 7. Thank you, Gus and David, for your input then. Item 7 is the Community Wellbeing Subcommittee Chair's Report. So I'd like to invite Councillor Apatu and Rebecca Dinwiddie to please join us at the front. All right, so thank you for joining us, and as a member of your subcommittee, Councillor Apatu, it's been great to see the body of work, so I look forward to you updating this committee.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for allowing us to present our community wellbeing update. I just want to highlight a few things, but look, it's just an opportunity to bring to this committee the amount of mahi that's going on within this team. This is a very diverse, huge amount of work going on behind the scenes, and I have to say it's a positive space to be in. It's been quite a heavy morning. We've heard from how well the community connectors are doing in the community, looking after the wellbeing of our community, etc. There are a number of actions that you've got in front of you that highlight some of the work. I do, as the lead, as the chair of this committee, want to hang on to the library a little bit, Hastings Library, understanding our financial constraints. But, you know, our Hastings Library is looking pretty sad, and we've talked to our asset management team about having a dedicated budget just to make sure that, you know, the upgrades are being done. The Marae Kākaho community plan is in there. Did you want to add anything, Jonathan, about how that's gone for the rural community or for your community?
Thank you for the opportunity. The recent plan is the second plan that the community has put forward, and I can really only comment on the level of success and value to the community of the first one that we did, because we're just so early into that, the second plan. It's been enormously valuable to the community to have those plans in place. We've achieved a huge amount for the community, totally in partnership with council. And I just acknowledge the value of that partnership and the value of those plans.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that feedback. And more recently, we just highlighted some of our pivoting around youth development, where we've had dedicated resources in our community facilities, but we're actually looking to reduce that, have some FTE there, but actually connect with external partners and look at working alongside them rather than running our own programs in-house. So it's a little bit of a pivot due to financial constraints, but there's a lot of positivity there as well. I'll just highlight something that isn't in the report around the senior housing Camberley. Councillor Jessup and I did attend a hui with the local senior housing residents. They're a little bit grumpy about about the increase in the rental that they will be paying. There was a petition landed with us that we've brought back, but we became aware of there's just a little bit of misinformation about MSD benefit entitlements for our senior housing residents. And in fact, there was a sum of money that perhaps was a bit incorrect. So the team, there's a number of actions. We're going to follow up, go back to them. I don't know whether there's anything else you'd like to add, Councillor Jessup.
Was all what you said.
Yeah.
It's just mamae, you know, and it's a hard situation for them to be in financially. Yeah, their hauora and their hinenaro, their whole ahua is affected by that. So.
But I have received some feedback too that some of the senior residents, after going through the MSD benefit entitlement, are actually $20 better off. So for those that have gone through, it actually has a positive spin. So it's just making sure everyone's got that information and being well supported by the team. But look, I'm sort of finishing there. It's really just a report. You can see the activity going on. If there's any queries, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or any feedback. Or whether Bex wanted to add anything? And just to highlight that, yes, some of our so that we're aware, some of our community connectors, their term will be finishing at the end of June. So we do have some permanent FTE that will carry on, but certainly that will come to an end, and just being aware of that. Okay, anything else? No, I don't think so.
Excellent. All right, well, I'll move on to questions. Councillor Kerr.
A question regarding community plans. Is there funding in our long-term plan for refresh, renew or new community plans?
Through you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Kerr, there is. As Councillor Apatu mentioned, we're actually going to be losing 4 community connectors at the end of June. So we won't have the capacity that we have had over the last sort of 12 to 15 months, and we still have got quite a lot of mahi to do in terms of all the work around the community emergency hubs. So our priority is definitely getting that piece of work finished off while we've still got the community connectors. But yes, there is a little bit of funding in the long-term plan for any new community plans or any refresh of community plans, yes.
Thank you. May I make a couple of comments?
Please.
The Te Pahui Community Plan, which is now, can't believe it's 5 years old, has been an outstanding success when they looked back through it and saw that all that they had achieved. I know that there's a sense of joining the community resilience work with a refreshed community plan. So that's something that may be coming to us. And I'd just like to change my hats and be the chair of the Regional Sports Park Trust and say that we will look at the council's vape-free, smoke-free policy and see that they can be as close as possible to a mirror image if it's appropriate. Because I did read in the report that the Regional Sports Park Trust is not a council organisation and therefore it's been sort of bumped to one side. But the trust, although I haven't spoken to my learned colleagues that sit here with me, we will look to make sure, if they're not already, that they're very similar.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question around the commercial hire of the projector. I wonder if we could have an up-to-date costing of set-up costs and daily hire if we want to use this internally for any project HDC wants to pursue, please.
I think we could take that away as an action and come back to you offline if that suits Councillor Watkins. Thank you. Mayor Hazelhurst.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for your report, Councillor Apatu and Biggs. Just got a couple of questions. One is around the library building, and it just says here, discussion around redevelopment state of the Hastings War Memorial Library building. Where are we up to with the improvements that have been put in the LTP, well, no, they actually put in the annual plan last year to do the improvements to the library.
So this is the maintenance that
Yes,
was outstanding.
yes.
I think that puts you in the hot seat, Mr. Fu.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the exact details, but I know they were working on the wastewater and the sewer and the toilet block. They're progressing on the various elements, so there was quite a lot of work, just tens of thousands, 100,000 worth this year, and then there's a lot of work next year carrying on. That's part of the building renewal work. And there was also work done with Beck's team in finance just to make sure that their operational budgets for cleaning and so forth were lifted to align with what's needed to deal with that. So I can get the actual detailed message sent through.
Lovely. I think it's really important that our community understand what we're doing with our library. You know, as governors, we do get complaints, and we would like to be able to present them with a work program when we will see some of the improvements being made to the building. So if I could have, for us all to have that. My other question is around the climate action work program, and we will look at, when we have a full contingent of governors, re-establishing our environmental wellbeing committee. But I think it would be very helpful for our governance team now to understand. Now we have a full-time FTE. What is actually happening? What are our priorities? What are we doing in this area of environmental wellbeing as an organisation and as a wider community? Yesterday I had a visit from the Environmental Centre, and we all need to be married up in terms of what we're all doing together, and how our work program's aligning, because they're doing a lot more now too, post-cyclone. So if we could have a report on that in the reporting. And the National Community Wellbeing Committee, what is the National Community Wellbeing Committee? The National Wellbeing Community, I've never heard of that before.
Through you, Chair. Ms. Sandra, I sit on that. It was a committee that's set up by Taitoara, and it's a number of representatives from different councils. They are fairly new, so just working out their scope of work. And for example, we have a national community wellbeing committee, conference once a year to help to organise that and priorities for that.
Be helpful for us to understand how that feeds into our community wellbeing. That what are learnings from the rest of New Zealand if we could be doing other things. One thing to set up committees, another thing to actually get the actions on our table. It'll be a good action to take away. Thank you, through your Chair.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, Councillor Jessup.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the mahi that's taken place so far, because it's actually given a bigger scope than just what that means. What does it mean? Just picking up on the community plans. How is that effectively going to target, especially when I look at the Māori impact statement? How's that? Can we work better with you, Rebecca, to get that in a more communal whanaungatanga place?
Yep, through you, Chair. Certainly, Kelly, it's probably good that we sit down together and work out the best way to do that. Historically, what has happened is if a community would like a community plan, they approach council through the LTP process, and that kicks the process off. It certainly is not impossible for us to actually approach a community and see if they would like us to help them with that process. It does obviously really require a community to be behind it, because it's the community that's got to drive it. But for example, the Camberley community is one we're looking at the moment. They have got a community plan in place, but what we're looking at is an investment plan for Camberley and how we work with external organisations to HDC to invest into Camberley into the long term. So that's a piece of work that's currently ongoing.
And just to add to that, we don't want to leave our Pacifica whānau out too, especially with Paharakeke in the pipeline with the Tongan community. and a big high population of Pacifica out there. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Jessup. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going back to the hire of the projector and the commercial thing. The first usage of that was on the library at Anzac Day. It never happened this year. I'm wondering why.
Through you, Chair, I'll have to pass to Ms Ferguson.
If you wouldn't mind coming forward just for the live stream, or have you got a microphone there?
I have got a microphone.
Excellent, thank you.
I am asking, answering a little bit on behalf, I believe, of the activations team. So the funding for that sat in the city centre activations, and I believe that funding wasn't available this year due to cost restraints. We didn't have any additional budget in the events to cover that for the same reason. So it was made a decision this year that there was frugal reasons if we wouldn't run the projection.
Thank you for that. I think we can pick that up as an offline conversation and see what we can do for the future, Councillor Dixon.
It's very disappointing because people look forward to that.
Yeah.
Quite
It's
a
very
surprise.
impactful, which is a credit to the team for doing it in the past. So.
That was one of the major reasons why we purchased the projector.
Through your chair to add that we had no flags up about Anzac Day either. No Anzac flags up this year.
Okay, I think what we'll do is, as an offline conversation, we'll just do a bit of an investigation into that and get an update out. Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much for this report. It covers a breadth of things. What I'm interested in is where the decision-making points are, and because this is a lot of what we've done, but I'm really interested in, out of these discussions, surely have been things that have come through, I'm assuming to this committee, that we've made decisions on. And I don't get a sense of that in this report.
I think that's good feedback to take away for future reports. Because you're right, Councillor Kerr, there's a lot in here that has come through to strategy and recovery through the mahi that's been done at the great community wellbeing level. So I think we'll take that away. That's good feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, well, thank you very much for your mahi, Councillor Apatu, and the wider subcommittee, and thank you, Rebecca. So we have recommendations on page 26, which is really just to receive this update. Thank you, Councillor Dixon, for moving. Thank you, Councillor Lawson, for seconding. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Given there are no minor or urgent items, we're now going to move on to item 10, which is the recommendation to exclude the public from items 11 and 12. And I'm just going to ask Mr. Cameron if he can please explain to us why those items are in public excluded.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's two items recommended to be heard in public exclusion. Both items relate to council being in either commercial negotiation position, so it's to protect council's negotiation position. And both items also refer to circumstances which are commercially sensitive information, either of council or of third parties. So given the states where these matters are at, it's recommended it's appropriate this time that they be heard in public excluded.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Do we have any questions on those recommendations? Thank you. Unfortunately, I'm not taking comments from the gallery, but thank you. Councillor Watkins, happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lawson. I will put those recommendations. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. I'd like to thank the community who are joining us online today for joining us, and also those who have been in our gallery today, as we now move into public excluded. Thank you for joining us.